The moment Richard's face turned ashen is something I'll never forget. There he stood, the powerful CEO who had destroyed my career, now powerless as his wife scrolled through the evidence on my phone. His empire was crumbling before my eyes, just as he had demolished mine 3 months earlier. When Patricia looked up from the screen, her eyes weren't filled with the disbelief I'd expected, but with a cold, calculated fury I recognized all too well. She placed her manicured hand on mine and whispered, "Let's destroy him together." But I'm getting ahead of myself. My revenge wasn't something I planned overnight. It was carefully orchestrated, meticulously designed to hit Richard where it would hurt the most. And it all began on that rainy Tuesday when I walked into his office, not knowing my life was about to change forever. I always arrived at Pinnacle Enterprises at 7:30 a.m. sharp. As executive assistant to Richard Blackwood, CEO and founder, punctuality wasn't just expected, it was required. 3 years I'd worked for him, watching the company grow from a promising startup to one of the most respected marketing firms in the industry. And for those 3 years, I'd ignored the whispers, the rumors, the knowing glances exchanged between employees when Richard would mentor the young female interns in his office after hours. It wasn't my business, I told myself. My job was to manage his schedule, prepare his presentations, and make sure the office ran smoothly. Nothing more. That particular Tuesday in April started like any other. I organized Richard's calendar, prepared the conference room for the board meeting, and sorted through his emails. By noon, I was ready to take my lunch break when I realized I'd forgotten my phone in the copy room. The hallway was quiet as I made my way back. Most employees were out for lunch, and the usual buzz of conversation and ringing phones had subsided. As I approached the copy room, I heard voices coming from inside, one clearly recognizable as Richard's, the other softer, feminine, and distressed. "Please, Mr. Blackwood, I really need this internship. My college depends on it." "Then you'll need to be more cooperative, Emma. Pinnacle only keeps team players." I froze. Emma Winters was our newest intern, bright, ambitious, and barely 21. "I don't understand what you mean by cooperative," Emma's voice trembled. I heard Richard's low chuckle, that same laugh he used during negotiations when he knew he had the upper hand. "I think you do. Let's discuss it over dinner tonight. My wife's out of town, and my house has an excellent view of the city." I don't think that would be appropriate, sir." "Appropriate? Let me tell you what's not appropriate: ungrateful interns who waste opportunities. Do you know how many students would kill for this position?" I should have walked away. I should have pretended I heard nothing. But something in Emma's voice, the fear, the powerlessness, reminded me of myself at her age, of times I'd been cornered and had no one to stand up for me. Without thinking, I pushed the door open. Emma stood backed against the copier, her face pale, eyes wide with relief when she saw me. Richard stood too close to her, one arm braced against the machine, effectively trapping her. When he turned to me, his expression shifted from irritation to a practiced smile. "Mia. I thought you were at lunch." "Forgot my phone," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Everything okay in here?" Emma glanced between us, clearly unsure what to do. "Just giving Emma some career advice," Richard said smoothly. "We're finished here." He straightened his tie and headed for the door, pausing beside me. "My office, 10 minutes. We need to discuss the Harrison account." After he left, Emma collapsed into the nearest chair. "Are you all right?" I asked, sitting beside her. She nodded, then shook her head, then covered her face with her hands. "This isn't the first time," she whispered. "He keeps finding reasons to be alone with me. Last week he said my skirt was corporate appropriate with this look that made my skin crawl." I felt sick. "Has he touched you?" "No, not exactly. Just stands too close, finds excuses to brush against me." She looked up, eyes pleading. "I can't quit this internship, Mia. My scholarship depends on completing it, and positions like this don't come around often. You shouldn't have to endure harassment to build your career, I said, surprising myself with my vehemence. What choice do I have? It's his word against mine, and he's Richard Blackwood. The resignation in her voice stirred something in me, a long-dormant sense of justice. It's not just you, is it? I asked quietly. Emma hesitated, then shook her head. Olivia from the marketing department. Zoe who left last month. There are others. In that moment, I made a decision that would eventually cost me everything, and then give me so much more. I'll help you, I said. All of you. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a detective of sorts. I started documenting everything, dates, times, witness accounts. I spoke to current and former interns, promising confidentiality, building a case file that grew thicker by the day. Some women cried with relief at finally being heard. Others were terrified of retribution. All had similar stories about Richard. Meanwhile, I performed my duties with extra diligence, making myself indispensable. Richard, oblivious to my investigation, continued his predatory behavior, growing bolder with each unchallenged transgression. The company had an HR department, of course, but it was headed by Martin Daniels, Richard's college roommate and loyal friend. Previous complaints had mysteriously disappeared or been dismissed for lack of evidence. Still, protocol demanded I try the official channels first. You understand these are serious allegations, Mia, Martin said, looking uncomfortable after I presented a sanitized version of my findings. Richard has built this company from nothing. His reputation should reflect his actions, I finished. I have 8 women willing to provide statements, Martin. This isn't gossip, it's a pattern of harassment. I'll look into it, he promised, but the way he wouldn't meet my eyes told me everything. The next morning, Richard called me into his office earlier than usual. His desk was clear except for a single folder, my personnel file. Close the door, he said, his tone glacial. I complied, already knowing what was coming. 3 years, he began, leaning back in his chair. 3 years I've mentored you, giving you opportunities, paid you well above market rate. And this is how you repay my generosity? I remained silent, which seemed to irritate him further. Martin showed me your little report. Quite creative fiction. He stood, circling the desk to loom over me. Did you think I wouldn't find out? That I'd allow you to damage what I'd built because you're, what? Jealous? Bitter that you're aging out of relevance? At 34, I was hardly aging out of anything, but I recognized the tactic, make it personal, put me on the defensive. It's not fiction, I said calmly. You know it, I know it, and so do all the women you've harassed. His smile was cold. Prove it. That's why I went to HR. And HR found nothing to substantiate your claims. He shrugged. Unfortunately, this fabricated witch hunt demonstrates poor judgment and a concerning lack of loyalty. I'm afraid we have to terminate your employment, effective immediately. Though I'd anticipated this, the reality still felt like a physical blow. 3 years of my life, my career trajectory, my financial stability, gone in an instant. You can't fire me for reporting harassment. That's retaliation. Richard laughed. I'm firing you for performance issues that have been documented over the past 6 months. Check your file. I glanced at the folder on his desk, knowing I'd find freshly created documentation of non-existent problems. Security will escort you out. Your personal items will be sent to you. He returned to his chair, already dismissing me from his mind. Oh, and Mia? I'd be careful about spreading defamatory statements. Pinnacle has an excellent legal team. 30 minutes later, I stood on the sidewalk outside the gleaming Pinnacle building, holding a box containing the few personal items security had allowed me to collect. My access card had been deactivated, my company email already closed. 3 years erased in half an hour. But as I watched the spring sun reflect off the glass tower, I didn't feel defeat. I felt something else entirely, a cold, clarifying anger and a single thought that would sustain me through the difficult months ahead. this isn't over, Richard. Not by a long shot. The weeks after my firing were some of the darkest of my life. Richard, true to form, hadn't just fired me, he'd made sure I was unhireable. References that should have been glowing suddenly described me as difficult, unstable, and prone to fabricating complaints. Job interviews that had progressed to final rounds mysteriously ended with apologetic emails about going in another direction. My savings dwindled as rent came due, then utilities, then credit card payments. I downsized from my comfortable apartment to a tiny studio in a less desirable neighborhood. I sold my car, then my designer work wardrobe, then finally my grandmother's jewelry, all except the simple gold locket that contained her picture. Through it all, I kept working on my case. Emma and several other women stayed in contact, secretly sending me internal emails and documentation. But without institutional power, without money for a lawyer who could take on Pinnacle's legal team, we remained voices shouting into the void. Until Patricia Blackwood called me. It happened on a sweltering July afternoon as I returned from another failed job interview. My phone rang with an unknown number, and I almost ignored it, weary of debt collectors. Is this Mia Kensington? The woman's voice was cultured, confident. Yes, who's calling? Patricia Blackwood. Richard's wife. My heart nearly stopped. Mrs. Blackwood, Patricia, please. And before you say anything else, I want to be clear, I'm not calling to threaten you or defend my husband. I'd like to meet. Suspicion warred with curiosity. Why? Because I believe you, she said simply. And I have information you might find useful. We agreed to meet at a small cafe far from Pinnacle's offices, somewhere Richard's associates wouldn't recognize either of us. I arrived early, choosing a corner table with a view of both the entrance and the emergency exit, a precaution that had become habit. Patricia Blackwood was not what I expected. In my mind, I'd pictured a trophy wife, young, decorative, naive. The woman who entered the cafe was around 50, elegant without being showy, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She ordered a black coffee before sitting across from me. Thank you for meeting me, she began, studying me with unnerving intensity. I've wanted to reach out since I heard about your dismissal, but I needed to be careful. How did you find me? She smiled slightly. I have resources of my own. Contrary to what Richard believes, I'm not just an ornamental accessory to his success. I never thought you were, I said honestly. No, I don't think you did. She took a measured sip of her coffee. I know why Richard fired you. I know about Emma, and Olivia, and the others. I said nothing, waiting. Richard thinks I'm oblivious, the dutiful wife who travels frequently for her charitable foundation, conveniently absent when he wants to entertain. He's half right. I do travel for my foundation work, which is genuine and important to me. But I've never been oblivious. Then why? Stay married to him? She set down her cup. 27 years, 2 children now in college, shared assets, my foundation that he partially funds. It's complicated. But I've been gathering my own evidence, making my own preparations. When I heard what happened to you, I realized it was time to accelerate my timeline. She reached into her purse and withdrew a slim USB drive. Financial records. Offshore accounts. Tax discrepancies. Evidence of Richard using company funds for personal expenses, including his dates with interns. There's enough here to interest the SEC, at minimum. I stared at the drive, hardly daring to believe it. Why give this to me? Because you were brave enough to stand up to him when it cost you everything. Because my children are grown and my foundation is now independently funded. Because I'm finally ready. Her expression hardened. And because Richard needs to face consequences, not just for his financial misconduct, but for how he treats women. Including me. I took the drive, my mind racing. This is a lot to process. Take your time. Review the information. I've made copies. She finished her coffee and stood. When you're ready to use it, call me. We'll coordinate. As she turned to leave, I found my voice again. Patricia? Why not just divorce him and use this in the settlement? She looked back, her smile now sharp as a blade. Divorce is part of the plan, Mia. But for a man like Richard, losing money isn't enough. He needs to lose everything he values, his reputation, his power, his company. The way he took those things from you. After she left, I sat for a long time, the USB drive heavy in my palm. For the first time since my firing, I felt something like hope, and something darker, more satisfying. The possibility of justice, yes. But also the sweet promise of revenge. The information Patricia provided was explosive. Financial fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, all meticulously documented. Combined with my evidence of sexual harassment, we had the makings of a perfect storm that could destroy Richard both professionally and personally. But timing would be crucial. Patricia and I developed our strategy carefully over the next few weeks, meeting in out-of-the-way places, communicating through encrypted messages. We contacted a journalist at the Financial Times who had previously investigated corporate misconduct cases. We consulted with a lawyer who specialized in workplace harassment and whistleblower protections. We reached out to former employees who had left under suspicious circumstances. All while Richard continued his life, blissfully unaware of the reckoning heading his way. The final piece fell into place when Emma called me, her voice tight with controlled anger. He's doing it again, she said. There's a new intern, Sophia. 19 years old. He's using the same tactics. Can you get her to talk to me? Better. She's been recording him on her phone. After what happened to you, she came prepared. 2 days later, I had audio files of Richard explicitly linking Sophia's internship evaluation to her willingness to get to know him better. Combined with the financial evidence and the testimonies we'd gathered, we finally had our arsenal. Patricia chose the timing perfectly. Pinnacle's annual charity gala, the company's most prestigious event, attended by clients, industry leaders, and the business press. Richard would be at his most visible, his most vulnerable to public exposure. The evening of the gala, I dressed with care in a borrowed designer gown. Patricia had arranged my invitation through a sympathetic board member who had his own reasons to resent Richard. I arrived late, deliberately, when the event was in full swing and Richard was already holding court among admirers. I felt his gaze find me across the room, saw the momentary shock in his eyes before he mastered it. He hadn't expected to see me here, in his territory, composed and confident instead of broken. I smiled slightly and turned away, moving through the crowd toward the bar. It took less than 5 minutes for him to approach me, champagne glass in hand, his public face firmly in place. Mia. This is a surprise. His voice was pleasant, but I could hear the tension underneath. Is it? I was invited. I sipped my water, maintaining eye contact. By whom? Does it matter? I'm here now. I glanced around the opulent ballroom. Beautiful event. Pinnacle seems to be thriving. His eyes narrowed slightly. What are you doing here, Mia? Really? Witnessing, I said simply. Before he could respond, Patricia appeared at his side, regal in midnight blue. Richard, darling, the Hendersons are asking for you. She turned to me with perfect social grace. I don't believe we've met. I'm Patricia Blackwood. Mia Kensington, I supplied, enjoying the flash of alarm in Richard's eyes as we shook hands. Mia used to work for Pinnacle, Richard said quickly. A junior assistant position that didn't work out. Executive assistant, I corrected calmly. Until I reported your sexual harassment of interns and was fired in retaliation. The nearby conversations faltered. Richard's face hardened. You're treading on dangerous ground. Legally speaking. Speaking of legal matters, Patricia interjected smoothly, I believe some journalists are here from the Financial Times. Something about a feature on corporate governance? Richard glanced between us, the first inkling of suspicion forming. What is this? Patricia checked her watch. It's 9:30, darling. And in about 3 minutes, it's your downfall. As if on cue, my phone chimed with a message. I checked it and smiled at Richard. Right on schedule. The Times has just published their investigation online. Fascinating reading about Pinnacle's finances and your management style. The color drained from his face. What have you done? We've done what should have been done years ago, Patricia said, her voice carrying clearly in the now silent bubble that had formed around us. We've exposed the truth. Around the room, phones were already lighting up as the article spread. Board members huddled in corners, speaking urgently. The journalists present were tapping rapidly on their devices. Richard turned to his wife, realization dawning. You did this? With her? I did this for every woman you've ever belittled, pressured, or threatened, Patricia replied. Including myself. Richard's composure finally cracked. You vindictive bitch, he hissed at me. You'll regret this. When I'm done with you. You'll what? I interrupted. Fire me again? Blacklist me in the industry? Sue me for defamation? Hard to claim defamation when everything we've reported is documented. I stepped closer. But please, finish that threat. There are plenty of witnesses here, and threatening a whistleblower would make an excellent addition to tomorrow's coverage. His hand tightened on his glass until I thought it might shatter. Then Martin appeared at his side, face grave. Richard, we need to talk. Now. The board is convening an emergency meeting. As Martin led him away, Richard looked back at us once, his expression a mixture of rage and disbelief that his carefully constructed world could collapse so quickly. Patricia touched my arm lightly. Phase 1 complete, she murmured. Are you ready for what comes next? I nodded, watching Richard's retreating back. Absolutely. The aftermath was everything we had anticipated and more. The Financial Times exposé went viral, picked up by every major news outlet. By morning, Pinnacle stock had plummeted. By afternoon, the board had suspended Richard pending investigation. By evening, the SEC had announced their own inquiry into the financial irregularities. And the women came forward, not just the handful I'd initially documented, but dozens spanning Richard's entire career. With the power dynamic shifted, with Richard now the one fighting for credibility, they found their voices. Patricia filed for divorce the next day, her timing strategic to maximize her leverage in the settlement. Her public statement was a masterpiece of controlled fury. I cannot and will not remain married to a man who has betrayed not only his marriage vows but the basic standards of human decency in his treatment of vulnerable young women. Richard's attempts to control the narrative failed spectacularly. His press conference, intended to portray him as the victim of a vengeful ex-employee and an embittered wife, devolved into a disaster when he lost his temper with a female reporter who pressed him on the harassment allegations. 3 days after the gala, I received a job offer from Aurora Media, one of Pinnacle's former clients who had cut ties following the scandal. The CEO, Elena Matthews, had herself experienced harassment early in her career. We need people with your integrity and courage, she told me during the interview. And your organizational skills, of course. Richard may have been a predator, but by all accounts, you kept that company running like clockwork. Within a week, I had a new position with better pay and benefits than I'd had at Pinnacle. Within 2, I'd moved back to a nice apartment. And within a month, I was helping Aurora establish comprehensive anti-harassment policies that would become a model in the industry. Richard, meanwhile, watched his life unravel thread by thread. The board terminated him after their investigation confirmed our allegations. The SEC filed charges related to financial misconduct. Former clients sued for fraud. His reputation, once golden, was irreparably tarnished. Patricia's divorce settlement left him with a fraction of his former wealth, his children barely speaking to him, his social circle evaporated. The final blow came when several of his victims filed a class action lawsuit, represented by one of the country's premier employment law firms, paid for by Patricia's foundation. I kept in touch with Emma and the other women from Pinnacle. Many found new positions through Patricia's network, others used their settlement money to pursue different dreams. Emma completed her internship at Aurora under my mentorship, graduated with honors, and joined our marketing team. 6 months after the gala, Patricia invited me to dinner at her new penthouse apartment, purchased with her divorce settlement and offering, as she noted with irony, an excellent view of the city. We sat on her terrace, watching the sunset paint the skyline in shades of gold and pink. "I saw Richard yesterday," she said, swirling her wine thoughtfully. "How was that?" "Enlightening. He was moving out of the house, downsizing to a condo now that the legal fees have mounted up. He looked old. Defeated." She considered this. "I thought I'd feel more satisfaction." "Don't you?" "I feel free." "Which is better?" She glanced at me. "How about you? Was it worth it?" I thought about the months of struggle, the fear, the financial hardship. And then I thought about Emma graduating, about Sophia pursuing her education without fear, about the changes our actions had sparked across the industry as other companies rushed to review their harassment policies. "Yes," I said firmly. "It was worth everything." Patricia raised her glass. "To consequences." "To justice," I countered, clinking my glass against hers. "That too," she agreed with a smile. "And to unexpected alliances." As night fell over the city, I reflected on how drastically my life had changed in 6 short months. I had lost everything, only to gain something more valuable, my power, my voice, my purpose. Richard had intended to destroy me, but instead, he had unwittingly created the architect of his own destruction. Sometimes, I thought, watching the city lights blink on one by one, justice doesn't arrive through official channels or righteous institutions. Sometimes it comes through the quiet resilience of women who have finally had enough. Women who refuse to remain silent. Women who, when pushed to their limits, push back harder. The next morning, I would return to my new office, mentor another group of young professionals, and continue building a workplace where talent and hard work, not submission to harassment, determined success. And somewhere across town, Richard would wake up alone in his downsized condo, surrounded by the consequences of his actions. That, I decided, was the most fitting revenge of all.